All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 82 of Wednesday Night Live. And I'm in a different location yet again. Right now, I'm in Key Biscayne, Florida, which is amazingly this strip of an island in Miami here. I have a friend who lives out here and just came out of a meeting and didn't have time to make it home. So here we are in the conference room of his building. And tonight, we're going to be talking about reversing aging. And one of the things that I really like to do, since we've been doing this now for 82 weeks, is to look at things through a different lens. In other words, as an example, if you're playing baseball, you get a better understanding and appreciation for the game of baseball by rotating through different places. If you're a catcher or a first base, or a shortstop, when you play those different positions, and this goes with really any type of sport, when you see the game through the lens of each of these positions, you get a general and better understanding of the game itself. And the same thing goes with the human body. You can look at it through the lens of different perspectives. And over the 82 weeks, we spent a fair amount of time talking about aging in general. And with aging, you can do the same thing. You can look at it through different lenses. And tonight we're going to look at it through the lens of something called the Horvath clock. And this is actually a way of measuring aging. And we'll go into a little bit of minor detail about what the Horvath clock is, how it can be used to measure aging, why that's important, and what we can learn from a study that was recently published about doing certain lifestyle changes and seeing what the reduction in the Horvath clock, what was the reduction in age as a result of these interventions. So let me go ahead. We still have people coming in, so we'll leave. I'm going to go live on YouTube here. So give me a moment for that. We'll let some more people come into the class. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. See if we can go live on YouTube. And looks like it's doing well. And then we'll get started. Maybe it's not working. We've had trouble broadcasting to YouTube the last couple weeks. So yeah, that's not working. So I'll upload it afterwards. Okay, all right, let me share my screen and we will get started. Share screen. Okay. And here we go. Okay, let me blow up my screen here and we'll get started. So as I said, we've spoken quite a bit about aging and reducing some of the damage that occurs from aging. And today we're going to look at it from the perspective of this, what's called this epigenetic clock. And you can, again, really just think about it very simply as a way of measuring aging, besides measuring it through asking someone's age. In other words, this particular type of measurement, we'll go into what that is actually able to predict morbidity and mortality, disease rates and death rates much better than just chronological age. So in that sense, and you'll see in other senses, it's probably a superior way to actually evaluate your aging. Now, there are lots of ways of doing that. This is just one. Again, we're looking at it through the lens of this particular clock called a Horvath clock. Now, it's basically known as an epigenetic clock. And what that is based on a concept, on a process in the body called methylation. And methylation basically is something very, very simple. And you don't need to know any of the details here, but essentially it's a way of binding a small thing onto another. In other words, something is appended is the way you can think about it. And by appending that, it can regulate and affect gene expression. So it can do this by bringing proteins there, or inhibiting transcription factors. In other words, it's able to regulate gene expression. And that gene expression is the reason why a skin cell looks different from a brain cell. They have the same DNA. So what is it that is causing, partly what is causing your DNA to express itself as a skin cell, as a brain cell, as a muscle cell, all these things? They all have the same DNA, of course. But the difference is that there are different genes that are activated. And part of this modification, part of the way this happens is through DNA methylation. And the Horvath clock utilizes 353 markers. Now, there's probably thousands of different markers, but this is what has been identified. And for this particular clock, there have been various things that have been associated with it. Obviously, people who have lived to centenarians who have lived to 100, if you look at their epigenetic clock, it does look a lot less. In other words, looking at these particular markers, they have less of them and they look younger from an epigenetic clock perspective. Same thing with people with HIV. HIV accelerates aging. And if you look at the measurement of the Horvath clock, this epigenetic clock on patients with HIV, a whole host of advanced aging has taken place that can be measured on the clock. It's associated with advanced age, is associated with breast cancer, obesity, and metabolic syndrome also correlate with advanced aging in this case, as well as various lifestyle factors. Now, the reason why I mention this is because it's just showing you the applicability of this particular clock, and that we're seeing, we've gone over why obesity and metabolic syndrome can be a problem. This is just sort of verifying the fact that this particular type of clock is capable of measuring these sorts of things. I don't want to make this too complicated. Just the fact is that there are things that are appended to DNA that cause the DNA to express itself in different ways. And some of those expressions can be positive and some of them can be negative. This word epigenetic means sort of, this epigenetic clock means from the outside. So there are environmental factors. You know, if you're smoking, as an example, that's going to activate certain, genes that look like pro-cancer genes, as an example. And all this is likely happening based on markers that are appended, that are attached to DNA, that are causing abnormal expression. And that's causing, in this case, looking at it from the perspective of aging, it's causing this accelerated aging. Now, could there be lifestyle factors that are going to reverse this clock? And there was a study done by Dr. Fitzgerald. It was called Potential Reversal of Epigenetic Age Using a Diet and Lifestyle Intervention. And so basically that just means is there a possible diet and lifestyle change that is going to reduce your age according to this particular clock? Now, before we get into that, I just wanted to bring up this notion of aging as a disease. And oftentimes when you raise that issue, I remember the first time I heard a lecture by someone who was lecturing about, quote, aging as a disease. It sort of struck me as almost ridiculous and somewhat shocking. And the reason that it felt somewhat shocking is, well, I mean, aging is natural, right? Aging is, we all age. And so looking at it as a disease, well, does that mean that we think that we're going to be immortal? Does it mean that that we look down on people who are aging and say that they have a disease? All these sort of thoughts come into your mind, but I'd like for you to consider it a different way. And that is that there have been identified and we'll go through some of these, 9 hallmarks of aging. And it is a fact that, unfortunately, some of these things, there's no reason why we shouldn't at least lessen them, because they lead to suffering, not with the goal of permanently extending somebody's life, but increasing what has been termed the health span. The number of years that people are vibrant and live fully. And so what we're trying to do here is look at aging and the mechanisms of aging as something that can be modifiable so that people live healthier lives while they're living. And in that case, that often extends life as well. And so we shouldn't shy away from looking at aging as a disease in that sense. So I remember how I heard that the first time, and I'm hoping that you can see why it makes sense to sort of think about it that way, so that we can extend this health span by identifying things that lead to chronic disease, as well as to suffering because of these natural aspects of aging. And when I say natural, because they sometimes lead to suffering, if we understand them from a biological perspective, why not do something about it? And in that case, I hope it makes sense that this is not some sort of extreme position to look at it from this perspective. Now, it's been estimated that increasing healthy aging by 2 years can save trillions of dollars. Now, why would it be that by increasing someone's life by 2 years, you can save trillions of dollars? And the reason is quite frankly that if people are suffering from chronic debilitation in their remaining years, that is incredibly expensive. But if they can age in a healthful fashion and even extend their life by 2 years, because of the ending of life of the debilitation, if you can prevent that, even with the extension of life, you're going to save trillions of dollars. So it's much, much better spending than chronic disease. And there is a way of, not to get too morbid, but there is a way of dying of old age. And dying of old age is often, basically, again, not to be morbid, but someone starts to feel, maybe a little bit unwell, and they take a nap, and their heart might slow down, and their lungs might fill with fluid, and then they just pass away silently. This is a way that people can die of old age without the debilitation. And the way it seems like a reasonable goal to try to get to, again, not being morbid, but if you can delay all of these sorts of things as much as possible by identifiable healthy lifestyle factors, then to me, it means you are doing what you can to value the miraculous life that you're given, not abnormally trying to prolong life in any fashion. So again, I am cognizant of the fact that for a lot of people, when they hear this notion of aging as a disease, they have not bizarre, but just extreme reactions to it. And again, I'm hoping that I'm lessening sort of the impact of that, so you can understand why, from a medical perspective, it does make sense to treat it that way, so that we can prolong healthful living, vibrant living, that sort of thing. Now, there are 9 hallmarks of aging, and if we think about them from a medical perspective, why not do something about it? We'll be talking about all 9 of these on a different lecture, probably in 3 or 4 weeks. But genome mutations in the DNA, which can be seen on the Horvath clock. Are there lifestyle modifications that can affect that? Telomere shortening, which are sort of like have been described as the tips of shoelaces. That's like the tip of your DNA, and as it gets shorter, it's been associated with shortening of life. And there are telomere tests that are also as somewhat of a clock. They can look at the amount of telomeres shortening that you have and give a rough estimation. But when it comes to looking at clocks, this Horvath clock is probably the most accurate. There were several companies, there may still be several companies that are doing sort of biological age testing using telomere length, but it's been shown not to be all that particularly effective, but it is one of the hallmarks of aging. And I do remember, and I think the medicine's still on the market, I can't remember the name of it, that extended telomeres. Now, that medicine, I don't think many people are still taking that, because there are lifestyle interventions, and a really great book by Elizabeth Bradburn, who won, I believe she won the Nobel Prize for describing this sort of process. She goes through in her book, The Telomere Fix or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of the book. And she goes through all these lifestyle factors and dietary factors that have been shown to lengthen the telomeres and therefore, ameliorating one of the hallmarks of aging: degradation of proteins, a diminished ability to adjust and sense nutrients, impaired mitochondrial function. We've spoken about cellular senescence, where these cells they just sort of peter out and they're sticking around, and they tend to release other chemicals that sort of poison the cells around them. There are supplements out there now to help with that, very, very targeted nutraceuticals, very targeted nutrients, poor communication between cells, non-renewal stem cells, so activation of stem cells, which we're seeing with things like certain fasting strategies. Again, a lot of these, almost all of them, have lifestyle interventions that can improve them, therefore helping with all these 9 hallmarks of aging. So again, we're not doing anything radical by looking at these from the perspective of a disease and prescribing diet and lifestyle to do something about it, which led Dr. Kara Fitzgerald, who is a naturopathic doctor, to do this study called Potential Reversal of Epigenetic Age using a diet and lifestyle intervention. This was published in the journal Aging. And basically, we'll go through this because I really think it's a very interesting study, and not necessarily because I'm going to recommend that you follow this 8-week program that they did, but it gives you a unique lens into looking at things from this epigenetic clock. So the background was that looking at this clock to measure aging, they did diet alone, and there was not Dr. Kara Fitzgerald, but other people, and there really was only modest reduction. There was a reduction, but it was modest. There wasn't a huge impact. So they decided that they needed to do a more targeted diet and lifestyle approach. We'll go through what the diet and the lifestyle was. Of course, you're seeing already what the results were: 3.23 years younger compared to people in only 8 weeks. That's pretty amazing when you realize what we spoke about in the beginning in terms of reduction in risk factors just with a couple of years. It's pretty impressive. I meant to hide that until the end, but there you go. Those are results. Around 2 years. So in other words, they took one group of people, then they took another group of people, and when they compared the control group, it didn't do anything, to the group that went through this diet and lifestyle program, the people that went through, again, only in 8 weeks, had a 3.23 year reduction. People alone on their own had around 2 years reduction, but compared to the group that they went in with, they were 3.23 years younger based on this clock, which is very profound in only 8 weeks. So let's go through what they actually did to get this incredible result. So let's first talk about what the diet was. So it was plant-centered. Of course, it was focused on this concept of methylation and the various things like high in folate, which is found in leafy green vegetables, that are always going to be helpful with methylation because it provides part of the I should say sort of the infrastructure that's needed for this type of beneficial methylation, this addendum to the DNA, as well as modulators of DNA that will go through, like vitamin C, and this is found in green tea, and curcumin, which is found in turmeric, and rosemary, and quercetin. It also had some nutrient-dense animal products like eggs and liver. We'll go through that, why that might be. They did a 12-hour window between eating and not eating. So in other words, a type of time-restricted feeding, which we spoke about in the past. In other words, what they did was when people finished their dinner, they waited 12 hours until they had their breakfast. So if you finished dinner at 8:30, p.m., then you wouldn't have breakfast until 8:30 a.m. They also put in a vegetable and fruit powder and added a probiotic. So let's look at the dietary prescription of this 8-week program. They did 3 servings of liver per week, 5 to 10 eggs, and then look at all the leafy greens per day. Now the liver and the eggs here, this is per week, of course. So they had 2 cups of dark leafy greens, 2 cups of cruciferous vegetables, 3 additional cups of colorful vegetables, 1 to 2 medium beets per day. There is enormous amount of methylation potential in beets. And so if you can get some beets into your diet daily, I actually do recommend it. Good old-fashioned borscht, that's what my mother often has in the morning. You do have to be careful. Some of them have a lot of added sugar to them. So you do have to be careful about that, but having some beets are really important. But if you look at the leafy greens here, they had 2, 4, 7 cups of vegetables per day, 2 cups of cruciferous vegetables, which goes with what I've always told people that you should probably have around a pound of leafy greens per day if you can somehow get that in, and probably half of them should be cruciferous vegetables, which is kale, collards, broccoli, greens, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, arugula, watercress, kohlrabi, Swiss chard. And then 3 cups of additional colored vegetables, 1 to 2 beets, some pumpkin seeds, some sunflower seeds, and then they had a choice of berries, adding some rosemary and turmeric. Again, we spoke about that rosmarinic acid from rosemary. It's pretty potent anti-aging chemical, as well as the turmeric, which has the curcumin in it. Not a big fan of turmeric, I should say curcumin supplements. I really think you should try to get that as a, in its natural form. Additionally, 2 cloves of garlic, 2 cups of green tea. It says brewed for 10 minutes. That seems excessive to me because I do brew my own green tea. That's a long brew time. Oolong tea, which has additional benefits. 6 ounces per, let's see, I'm not sure, 6 ounces of animal protein, 2 servings of a low glycemic fruit, organic over conventional, of course, hydrated. In this case, it was no eating between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. So they tried to keep it very, very specific. They used healthy oils and avoided sugars, minimized plastics, and they did a green supplement that also had a probiotic in it. Then they did 30 minutes of exercise per day for at least 5 days per week at an intensity of 60 to 80%. And they also made sure that they got a minimum of 7 hours of sleep. And they did this breathing exercise called Steps to Elicit the Relaxation Response. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And that is the protocol. And I believe this is readily doable by a lot of people. And the fact that they got such a profound reduction in only 8 weeks, I think is just tremendous and really, really remarkable that they've been able to do this. Now, there are things here all of us could start to incorporate. First and foremost is trying to increase your intake of leafy green vegetables. Again, I'm trying to not say that you need to go through this protocol yourself, but that it would be important for almost everyone to try to get that amount of leafy greens possibly per day. Now, why is it that they added 5 to 10 eggs per week and 3 servings of liver, which with each serving being 3 ounces? That, to me, that's a large serving of liver. I know the authors said that they felt this was a small amount, but I actually think it's a reasonably high amount. Liver happens to be nutrient dense. It has an enormous number of soluble of vitamins in it. And as a result, you do get things from liver that you can't get from from muscle meats, and therefore you can live without liver, of course. And the authors here probably felt like that that it would be important for you to incorporate these higher fat soluble vitamins into your diet, and having a little liver could be sort of like having a little bit of nutritional insurance, so to speak. 5 to 10 eggs. The reason they add that is there are things in the yolk that are sometimes difficult to get in the diet. Things like choline, as one example. And of course, they also recommended the omega-3 enriched eggs. But for some people, they do have a difficulty getting things like choline and potentially omega-3 as well. And then the sleep and the exercise, etc. So let's go through a little bit about what we know about what they've done and what the history of these studies have shown that they're looking at. So 30 minutes, 5 times per week, 60 to 80% maximum of exertion. And actually, Tai Chi, Qigong has already been studied to show reduced age. If you go to any Chinatown in the United States, in the park in the morning, you'll see people doing Tai Chi. It's one of the most amazing exercises along with Qigong, because it, in addition to being proven in this case to reduce factors of aging, it's also associated with better balance and lower stress, all the things that make it really makes sense that it has this impact, and is really an incredible type of exercise. And of course, if it's been done for thousands and thousands of years, there has to be a reason for it, for its benefit, for recommending it for all these thousands of years. There are Tai Chi classes all over the country. You don't have to be near a Chinatown, but if you are, it's fabulous to find a teacher. And you can go to YouTube, and there are plenty of Tai Chi videos for all kinds of different ages. They have Tai Chi and people who can't get out of their chairs, where at least you're moving your upper body and, circulating things, moving your arms and that sort of thing. There's a whole host of benefits to moving your arms. In fact, they did conductors, who conduct orchestras have some of the longest lifetimes, life expectancies are found in music conductors. One of the reasons they think is because of all the hand motion that activates the vagus nerve, which can help with relaxation. Of course, it's also movement, but it could be engagement with music. I mean, you always have to look at all of these things because there are so many impactful things that are happening. In other words, there are probably so many factors involved to what makes Tai Chi so beneficial. But the fact that we could study it with this particular clock, and it has been shown to reduce age, is pretty incredible. Women with longer history of exercise already has been shown reduction compared to peers. So pretty incredible. But also excessive exercise can also accelerate aging. And I can tell you that practicing medicine in Southern California for many years, and now I'm in South Florida, it's a problem for some people that they do excessive exercise. And so there are various people who are trying to come up, even Fitbit, Fitbit, the thing that people wear on their wrist, everyone knows it. They are coming up with what are called READY scores, which are based on something called heart rate variability, to determine the balance of your nervous system, to be able to give you some kind of indicator of whether or not you should exercise that day. It gives, in other words, if you're imbalanced, if your stress part of your body is overly accelerated or overly activated in comparison to your rest and relaxation part of your nervous system, if it's unbalanced, it's not a good idea for you to do excessive exercise. So if you have a lower readiness score, say with something like Fitbit, then that day you should take it easy and you should just do walking. There are various types of exercise that are unfortunately going to accelerate aging because of inducing a accelerated aging response, an accelerated stress response from the excessive exercise. So to really be careful with that. Post-traumatic stress disorder has also been shown. And speaking about the Horvath clock, they have done other studies. One study showed giving a small group of men growth hormone, metformin, which we've spoken about before. It's a type 2 diabetes medicine, but also has some other factors that make it a potential medicine for anti-aging. DHEA, which is a hormone precursor, and some other supplements showed a 1.5-year reduction over 1 year. Again, this is sort of a medical, conventional medical way of looking at the Horvath clock, not incorporating all the wonderful benefits of lifestyle change that probably can never be fully quantified, never completely measured. It's probably going to be impossible to be able to detail all of the reasons why walking every day is so beneficial for your health. So many, almost every week, I've spoken about how the benefits to when you do something that benefits one organ system or one part of your body, it's always affecting multiple parts of your body. This is just how the body works. And we have one thing that benefits, we may understand how it benefits one thing, but ultimately it almost always benefits so many other things. And so when we're thinking about doing things, we should look at this, if they make sense. Do they make sense? Does it make sense that walking, we know that walking is beneficial, but do we really need to quantify every single little thing that walking does? No, we don't need to do that. But looking at it from a conventional medical perspective, people are going to devise studies like this where they give people pharmaceuticals to try to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But as you can see, 1.5 reduction is significant, but not like the reduction that they saw after 8 weeks of doing diet and lifestyle that makes sense. What makes the study so great to me is that we have this way of measuring it and just showing some proof, which can then be built upon, and more studies can be done to see if you can improve on that. Another study was a small group of women where they gave them a Mediterranean diet and vitamin D3. I believe this was also over 1 year. It was a 1.47 reduction. And amazingly, they did a 16-week trial of 4,000 units of vitamin D3 in obese African-American women who were D deficient, and they had a 1.85 reduction in biological age. Now, this is incredible, if you ask me. And the reason it's incredible goes back to our last class where we spoke about vitamin D and immunity, and how, unfortunately, the African-American community in this country, one, because they're darker skinned, and two, we're not outside in the sun like we used to. And there are some other nutritional deficiencies that are unfortunately more prevalent in the African-American population. Their vitamin D level is often, unfortunately, very, very low. Most people are low to begin with. But if you're darker skinned and you have some of these nutritional deficiencies, unfortunately, it makes it much worse. And therefore, I truly believe, and I'm not the only one, of course, but that the reason for the high mortality rate, one of the reasons for the high mortality rate of COVID in obese African-American people with COVID is almost certainly partly due to vitamin D deficiency. Because when you become obese, you need more vitamin D to get those levels up. And again, we spoke last week about why vitamin D is so important to immunity, about how it reinforces the barriers to prevent you from one, gaining an infection, and then also two, it has an impact on your overall immune system to be able to properly deal with things if they do get past your body's protection. So amazingly, the reason why I like this is it provides some sort of scientific evidence that there are some things happening at a very deep level, right down to the DNA, which is what we're sort of measuring based on this Horvath clock, that make vitamin D just gives even more impetus to recommend people to get their vitamin D level checked. If you don't know your vitamin D level, I think it's really critical that you find out what it is. It should be above 40. And especially in this time of the pandemic, if you look at the risk for hospitalization in people who are vitamin D deficient, the risk is something like 3 times more. It's something like 3 times more likely for you to be hospitalized if you're vitamin D deficient. So, and even Anthony Fauci, who, even he takes vitamin D. He doesn't make official recommendations, although he should, for people to get their vitamin D level checked. But nonetheless, he's aware that for himself that he's taking vitamin D and zinc. Anyway, I got off track here. Point is that even vitamin D is going to have a whole host of changes all the way down to the DNA that have been shown to have a reduction in biological age. Thought that was really, really interesting. The breathing exercise was done 20 minutes per day, something by a doctor by the name of Dr. Benson, created this relaxation meditation, which is basically sitting in a chair, picking a phrase. Many cultures around the world have come up with mantra meditations. Mantra, of course, is an Indian word, where people repeat something over and over again. In my tradition, the Jewish tradition, there is a tradition of repeating a Hebrew phrase over and over again to get into a certain state of relaxation. You can pick a word like calm or love or whatever relaxation, whatever word, and on the exhale, you silently say it to yourself, and you sit in a comfortable position. You go through your body consciously, starting with your feet all the way up to your body. So you're sitting in a chair, and you close your eyes and you relax your feet, relax your calves and your thighs and your abdomen, and you work your way up the body. You pick your phrase. It could be, health, you could say. So you breathe in, and then on the exhale, you don't say it out loud, but you just think the word, and you do that for 20 minutes with the expectation at the beginning that it's going to be difficult, believe it or not. The Taoists, in the Taoist tradition, would train people early on with something called the century count, which is just counting each breath to 100. Now that doesn't sound very difficult, but I would recommend that you try it, because most people will, believe it or not, forget. Their mind drifts, and they might not even make it to 20 before they've sort of forgotten what they're doing. I know that probably sounds like that wouldn't happen, but I recommend you just do that. You could sit in a chair and you could do the same thing. You could do the progressive relaxation, feel your body relax all the way up, and then just count your breath. And then try to get to 100 with the recognition that, of course, thoughts are going to come into your mind, and you try to let them pass. Don't pay attention to them, and then just continue to count and see how long it takes you to get to 100. And if you forget for a couple breaths, then start over and see. It's a lot more difficult than you think, but if you can work your way up to a century count, the benefits to your overall relaxation, getting up to 100, are really, really incredible. Anyway, I recommend that people try that. And then optimizing sleep. So they spoke to them about sleep hygiene. We've spoken about that before, and they recommended getting 7 hours nightly. And we've reviewed already. One, they did have a reduction in triglycerides, but compared to the control group, they were 3.23 years younger by this Horvath clock in 8 weeks. And that's really profound. And, I think a lot of people probably watching tonight are probably thinking to themselves, well, it all makes sense, right? It all is common sense that you make these changes and you get younger. But what's, I think, really incredible about this is that we've been able to, in this particular study, make these measurements to provide some sort of scientific validation of what's going on with a clock that has been shown to really correlate well. It's one of the best sort of clocks that we have. And this is sort of how we attack aging and how we start to look at aging from the lens of this particular mechanism of epigenetics, which again is happening from the outside, all kinds of different factors that are involved. So I found it very interesting. Hopefully you found it interesting as well. I love sharing this information with you. Next week, I can't remember what we're doing next week. Next week, we're discussing, oh yes, we're discussing toxins, how to avoid toxins in the environment. And then the following week, we're going to be discussing the 9 factors that lead to weight gain. And we're not talking about weight loss necessarily. We're talking about what are the abnormal factors that cause weight gain. Of course, if you're interested in weight loss, then certainly having a clear understanding of what causes weight gain is certainly going to help you with weight loss. But ultimately, what I want to do is give an understanding, again, looking at the human body through the lens of a particular system or a particular thing that happens. And on that particular episode, we'll be talking about human health, looking at it from the perspective of what caused the 9 factors that cause weight gain. And it gives you, when you understand all 9, it gives you this really unique understanding of human health, just like what we spoke about at the beginning, that in sports, when you learn about a particular sport and you start to play it from different positions, you get a better and deeper appreciation for the game itself. And so we're looking at things, again, through different lenses with the ultimate goal of you becoming your own authority in health, getting a more holistic and well-rounded understanding of how the human body works and functions, and how things go wrong. And when you get an appreciation for that from many different sides and perspectives, it really gives you the motivation to be able to, and the confidence to make changes in your overall lifestyle that are going to be beneficial. And therefore, you become a resource for yourself and a resource for your family and those that love you. And ultimately, the goal is hopefully to bring you more vibrant and a longer health span, a longer life with a healthier life, the most important thing that you can have. So thank you all for your attention tonight. I look forward to sharing the information with you the next couple weeks. And I wish all of you good health, and I'll see you next week. Good night, everyone.